Okay, I think we're recording. So, welcome everyone to our January 13th, 2026 LibsWork meeting. My name is Andrea Lewandowski. I am with the New Jersey State Library. And our guest speaker today is Andres Ramirez, who is with the AI Safety Awareness Project. And our topic for today is where is AI in 2026 and where is it going? So, before I turn everything over to Andres, just a couple quick housekeeping items. First, we like to do introductions in the chat before we get started. So if you don't mind putting in your name and what organization you're with and maybe what you do. If you have any updates you want to share or interesting things going on or burning questions, you can put those into the chat. We can also keep the chat going during the presentation and during the meeting. So if you have links or anything you want to share, just make use of that. And I always make sure everybody gets those links after the meeting in a follow-up email. Also, I want to let you know that our next meeting will be, and now I'm blanking, in February. And it will be on, I have everything else except the date, February 10th, my husband's birthday at 2 p.m. And our speaker will be Amanda Sweet, who is the Technology Innovation Librarian at the Nebraska Library Commission. And she'll be speaking on accelerating digital skill training for the good life. And this is going to talk about Tech Ready Nation, about tech training for workforce development, and things related to that. So I'll have the full description in our follow-up email. So I hope that you will attend that as well. All right, so I think that's about it. And thank you all for everyone who is sharing their introductions in the chat. And we can keep that going. So I guess now I will turn it over to Andres, who will give the presentation, and then we'll have time for discussion. So Andres, do you want people just to use chat and potentially unmute if they have questions, or would you like people to hold that to the end, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking we can feel free to use the chat throughout the presentation, but during the presentation, I will also stop to ask if anyone has any questions or thoughts. And you can feel free to go off mute or simply, you can say, hey, I've entered something in the chat. But we will have like pre-designated sections in the presentation to go through your questions.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thanks, Andrea, for bringing me here. Hello, everyone. My name is Andres Ramirez. I am the Director of Partnerships at AI Safety Awareness Project. And this presentation might be a little bit of a weird one, right? Because I want to walk you through what our presentation is and what it looks like, right? But I will be taking some steps back as well to share a little bit about our reasoning, why we structured the workshops this way, what kind of feedback we've gotten from patrons. Really, my end goal today is to give you a good understanding of our workshops so that hopefully you think that it's valuable for your community. And as such, you bring either one of our volunteers or one of our core team members to your library for either A, training your staff, or B, just presenting these workshops themselves, right? So as such, I'm going to give a little bit, it's going to be like 50% what the presentation typically is for patrons, so you get to experience that. But also the other 50%, or maybe call it 30%, will be answering questions about the structure, things like that. Okay. Before I get started, I just want to share that libraries are one of the core pillars that we work with. So first and foremost, our mission is to educate the public on AI. We strongly believe that if AI is going to be affecting everyone as it is today, then we should all get some sort of say in how and why that AI affects us, right? With that in mind, we are there to give folks the fundamental understanding, and it really says it in the title of our most popular workshop, what is AI and where is it going, right? You can't have an informed opinion without information/knowledge. So we're there to provide that knowledge. We want folks to be offered a space to discuss and think through AI. The vast majority of the workshops that we've done with libraries so far, we get folks afterwards saying, I've never sat down and thought about this. And it makes sense, right? Because people have their day-to-day lives, people have competing priorities, etc. Our goal is to make sure that people are educated about AI enough so that they feel comfortable getting involved in the national conversation. And hopefully, our very pie in the sky goal is, can we make sure that AI benefits everyone in the way that we all agree to be benefited? So far, we have been forced to accept what comes out of Silicon Valley, for better or for worse. Can we rediscover our individual agency, especially as AI systems become more and more capable? Can we make sure that folks are more proactive instead of reactive in their understanding of AI? So I'll share my screen now. This is all done, as I mentioned, through a combination of channels. So the first channel, and you should be able to see the workshop sample list here, is workshops themselves, right? Presenting these to the public so that they may know what is going on in the AI ecosystem. I will enter this in the chat before the end of the call, so you guys can save this and take a look at it yourselves. And you guys can let us know, hey, this one would be helpful for my library. As you can see, we have introductory, intermediate, and advanced workshops. The second channel is actually training librarians to be AI savvy. I know we have someone from SPL on the call. Elizabeth, I'm not sure if we've met yet, so I apologize. I've met with tons of people from SPL, but we are actually leading the training this year, beginning of February, on how do we make sure that librarians know how to respond to patron concerns and questions regarding AI. We're doing the same for Chicago as well. And although we would love to run workshops in every single library, we are a team of 4. So ideally, we actually prop up communities to have little AI safety experts themselves. Ideally, the folks that are on here from Maine don't have to rely on me, who lives in Chicago, to come in and actually teach them. Can we train someone in Maine to be an AI safety expert for their community and for their patrons? That's our ideal state for 2026. So with all that said, let me give a little bit of background into the organization itself, and then we can get started full in earnest with the rest of the presentation. So we're a 501c3. We are not an advocacy organization. We are not an upskilling or reskilling organization either. So think of our training as complementary to trainings like how to use AI for resume building, how to use AI safely for therapy, right? What we try to do is provide a fundamental understanding so that further programming might add on top of it. So another way to put it would be, we're trying to give folks critical thinking toolkit so that they know how to use AI at a conceptual level. We're not an advocacy organization. We're not there to tell folks, hey, this is the bill you should vote for. Hey, this politician's worth voting for. We don't do that in our workshops. What we do is try to give a balanced view of the risks of AI. Why risks of AI? Well, simply put, there's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars being spent in making sure that the public knows the benefits of AI. And although those are worth calling out, we do have a limited amount of time with these workshops, right? So we try to focus on giving folks the other side of that equation. Before I move forward, any questions about anything that I just said, who we are as an organization, the types of workshops that we run, how we work with libraries? Feel free to put it in the chat or go off mute. Okay, sounds good. Let's keep it going then. So first of all, we start off with defining artificial intelligence. And this is where we get to the first tricky part. There's a lot of gray area here, right? There is no official definition of AI, but here's a really good way of thinking about it. It's just a machine that mimics human intelligence. That's it, right? Of course, human intelligence here is doing a lot. There's plenty of people that think you can't replicate human intelligence. There's people that think that you can replicate human intelligence, especially if you break it down into different segments. For example, if I said it takes intelligence to be good at chess, I'm sure most of you would agree with that, right? It triggers different parts of our brain um, in order to be good at chess. AI is already better than humans at chess, right? So it's not about saying that AI is as good as humans or as smart as humans in general. But if we break down intelligence, another example might be facial recognition. We're seeing examples of AI be surpassing human capability in different aspects. So taking a step back from why we have this here, it's just to give people an idea of what AI is, so we all are working off of the same definition. Common question, and if you work directly with patrons, and excuse me, while I actually close the blinds here. If you work directly with patrons, you might get this question a lot. How does AI work? Fact of the matter is, no one knows. Not me, and not the top researcher in Meta that makes about 1,000 times more money than me, right? No one knows. It's a black box. And this is very important to note because people confuse software with AI. Oh, it's just like an app. It is not just like an app. It has grown. The key differentiator here is that when software showcases emergent features, they're typically bugs, right? Typically, when something is acting in a way that it's not supposed to, it's typically a bug, not necessarily so for AI. And just to be clear, we go into this in a lot more detail during the actual presentation, but given the limited amount of time I have with you all today, I'm just giving you a very, very brief overview of the most popular workshop we run for libraries. How big will AI be? Here are a couple quotes from CEOs that are basically at the head of AI. And this is where we start thinking about that critical thinking toolkit. Right around here, we ask, why would a CEO say that this is the single most powerful force of our time? Pretty easy to tell that there's some incentives here at play, right? And yet we have to balance that with the idea that CEOs also of these AI companies also have more insight than any of us do, right? Because they're the ones setting the pace and setting the direction of AI research. So again, we come to this idea of like we have to, it's not black and white. We can't ignore CEOs and what they say because of incentives. At the same time, um, we can't also believe it as gospel just because they know a little bit more than us. And it's very important to note that we don't do these presentations if we don't talk about the development and pace of AI development just because CEOs say so. This is an independent research lab showcasing how AI is getting better and better at autonomous tasks for AI research and development. So as more models come out and as time passes, AI gets better and better at handling more complex tasks. And there's plenty of people that think, hey, you know what? AI is purely hype. AI is snake oil. AI is just not it, right? But it's important to differentiate between hype and scientific research. How do we do that? Well, you've got to eliminate the financial incentive. If Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, says artificial general intelligence, AI that's as good or better than most of us at most things, is coming out tomorrow, I'd be extremely skeptical because he depends on a hype flow in order for the money to keep flowing. But what about researchers that don't work at the big labs? What about people who have zero incentive, financial incentive for this to actually happen? It seems like those voices, maybe we should be listening to a little bit more. But we don't have to just take their word for it, right? We can see that through video, through image generation, AI has gotten better. Here is a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti in 2023. You don't need a watermark. This is atrocious. This is nightmare fuel, right? You don't need to worry about anyone falling for this. Here's AI generated videos in 2025. Gosh, that's loud. So all of this is to showcase that it's not just about graphs and numbers going up to the right. We are seeing it in our everyday lives, and we see it also in the harm that AI is causing. So this leads me to the next section of what are the problems that AI could actually bring. And we used to break this down into short term, medium term, and long term. But existing problems being exacerbated, such as racism, prejudice, that's already happening. New unprecedented problems. Last year, there was a extremely tragic rash of suicides in teens because of ChatGPT and similar chatbots. This is already happening. And what we're really worried about, or I guess what we're worried about in addition to all of this, is if AI keeps getting better and better, how do we make sure that it doesn't kill us all? How do we make sure that it doesn't become capable enough to cause more harm? Because right now it's extremely easy to create scam and fraud content. And this is a very specific type of harm, but it's harm nonetheless. So, if possible, I'd love for a willing and brave participant to share their LinkedIn on the in the chat. What we're about to do is simply create a scam email based off of your LinkedIn profile, and we're going to create one deepfake of you sitting in jail. This gets deleted as soon as I close the tab, and this is all closed off from the actual web, right? This is a closed model built for educational purposes. Thank you very much, Justin. All right.
I'm so excited.
Okay. That's typically not the response I get. People are very hesitant to do this, but I appreciate it.
I'm very delighted to see what happens and what it's capable of.
Okay, right on. Let's see. Let's see, right? To give you guys some context, we do the exact same thing in the workshop. We ask someone to either give us their LinkedIn. Sometimes people are a little bit nervous, so then we just put in our own. Here's Justin's LinkedIn. Does this sound about right to you, Justin? Does this look about accurate?
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Okay. Well, let's see what kind of phishing email we can write here. And keep in mind that this is all, again, for educational purposes, but it truly is as easy as clicking buttons. I'm not coding anything. I'm not even writing out a prompt. I could, but it's not even necessary, right? Scam and fraud has been around for a very, very long time. This is nothing new. What is new is automatically writing emails based off of people's personal information that's made public so that you can socially engineer them to gain your trust. So, hey, I saw you worked as a cruise ship magician before getting into libraries. Is that true?
That is true.
That is really cool. Okay, that's a whole nother workshop within and of
Well,
itself.
thank you.
Um, that's a hell of a career pivot, blah, 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 blah. Do you think leaving performance magic was giving up on something meaningful, or was it just stepping stone you were always planning to leave behind? Notice how the email looks totally normal, no misspellings, this looks like someone that actually researched Justin. And Justin, out of curiosity, do you have a response here on this question?
Um,
You don't have to.
well, I was a starving actor in LA before I entered libraries, and cruise ship magician was just a way to pay the bills. I did pivot with my career. I did magic shows to kick off our summer reading program at my library for many years before I became a director elsewhere. But yeah, it has really helped out.
Fantastic. So, based off of what you said, I am going to say Cruise Ship Magician was just to pay the bills, but I enjoy bringing magic to my patrons. I think that's a really
Sure.
nice way of putting it, right? And we all know how email works. It's not necessarily like a chat, right? Here we have Mike saying, hey, I'm actually pretty pissed off about that answer. All in all, it's to show that you can have long conversations with an AI without knowing that it's an AI. And again, going back to that term of social engineering, if you guys have done any cybersecurity trainings or anything like that, social engineering is about gaining people's trust so that you can actually try to scam them. So if I'm Justin here, okay, this guy's calling me out. That's kind of BS. Let me just check out his LinkedIn and let me sign in real quick. And all of a sudden, I just got scammed. So this is just to showcase the audience how easy it is to create scam content with one piece of information, which in this case is the LinkedIn. If we keep this going, we can create a deep fake of Justin sitting in jail using one picture. Now, I don't know about you all, but I have LinkedIn, I have Instagram, I have Facebook Marketplace, and many people have more. Imagine all the things that you can bring together to try to scam or defraud someone. And here is Justin in jail. The,
Wow.
the scary part here is uh, this is an old model. And I think even if you saw this picture potentially out in the wild, the lighting might let you know that this is kind of AI, right? It might let you know that. AI models are better than this now. This is from early 2024. We can also make a deep fake of him holding a gun. In the workshops that I've run for libraries, I have run into audience members who have been scammed by this type of scam already, who have lost money because they thought their daughter was in jail. So truly tragic stuff is, again, if we're talking about the mission of the workshops, it's to make sure that people know what current AI capability can do, but also get them thinking about, okay, if it's this bad, what type of future are we heading towards? The reason that we're dealing with scam and fraud today, the reason that we're dealing with teenage suicides today, misinformation, disinformation, bias, is because we were not prepared to take this on as a public technology going back 5, 10 years.
This is wild, this picture. There's, I watch a lot of content creators on YouTube, and you know how they'll kind of, the commentary ones will sort of peck at each other every once in a while, and somebody's always investigating somebody else. But one in particular, there was kind of a not really deep dive on her, but whatever. And it said, oh, she's posted a picture, of herself at home on her social media, like she's this kind of, and it was this exact photo.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is something that,
Not Justin, obviously, but
yeah, right. That would have been crazy. I mean, it's crazy because everyone is dealing with this. Everyone. If you are somehow online, even just for work, this is something that you have to think about. What is AI generated content? For the participants in our audiences, for our regular workshops, what we try to do is give them a critical thinking toolkit, right? Unfortunately, digital artifacts like the extra finger, I don't know if you guys have heard about that. Those don't really work anymore. For these type of pictures, the background's quite blurry, but again, this is an older model. So you really have to start teaching patrons about media literacy. Who sent me this picture? Why are they sending me this picture? Where did this picture come from? Can I double check can I double check that it's like a real picture with someone else? Is there someone in my community that I can help, that I can rely on for this? And this is where our actual library training program comes in. Again, going back to the idea of mini AI safety experts that communities can depend on. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this, Justin. Very, very helpful. Appreciate you raising your hand.
We're happy to do it. I now I took a couple screenshots. I can't wait to share it with my siblings and be like, check out what I learned today.
Check. Look what I'm up to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The pictures are deleted as soon as I close this tab. So there you go. That won't be used against you anytime soon. All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. I got you. Um, so this is, of course, part of the workshop, but also we have forecasting exercises as well. And this is to get the audience engaged in the conversation. This is to make sure that we're also kind of gut checking folks, right? Like, so getting an understanding of what they think. When will certain milestones be hit? So we have this question that we ask folks. We give them about a minute or two to respond. And then we compare it to prediction markets. What are other communities saying about how likely this is? I'll stop there for a second. Any questions so far? Are folks following? Does this kind of seem to make conceptual sense in regards to the flow itself? And people can enter on chat or go off mute.
It does. It flows nicely. I missed that on the previous screen, but I mean, you've got all your sources cited somewhere for these things too, because you know people are going to
Yes.
ask for them.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, Lisa. Um, then we start talking about actual long-term risk, or excuse me, future-term risk. We don't really say long-term anymore because we don't really know if it's going to be long-term, unfortunately. So future risk. Where is AI development headed? AGI. Can you guys hear that?
No.
I think you need to
No.
share your sound.
Yep. Okay. Let me share my sound.
Equivalent of a median human.
How about now?
Yes.
All right, great. So here we have Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, sharing his thoughts on AGI.
Hey, thanks so much. From people having different definitions of
Give me 1 second. Let's just restart that clip.
I think there's like a lot of valid definitions to this, but for me, AGI is basically the equivalent of a median human that you could hire as a coworker. And then they could say do anything that you'd be happy with a remote coworker doing, like just behind a computer, which includes learning how to go be a doctor, learning how to go be a very competent coder. Like there's a lot of stuff that a median human is capable of getting good at.
Okay, median human, right? AGI, artificial general intelligence, is the equivalent of your human coworker. To be extremely clear, we do not have Sam Altman here, and we do not have these CEO predictions here because we should take them as gospel. Going back to thinking critically, and this is also part of media literacy training that we'd like to add as well. When you look at the news and you hear Sam Altman saying this is going to happen or this is not going to happen or whatever, you have to understand that there are incentives at play and other factors at play that affect that messaging. So this is very, very good for us to just be talking about with our audience because many people just don't know that, right? It's very easy to take things at face value. So going back to the idea of not taking it for gospel, but taking it with a grain of salt, right? So here are a couple CEOs and their thoughts on when AGI might be a possibility, might become a reality. And an interesting exercise here is to ask the audience, what if it was in 30 years? Sincerely, like what if we developed an AI that was as smart or smarter than us in 30 years? A common parallel that AI that's shared in AI safety circles is if we knew that there was going to be an asteroid hitting the Earth in 2045, would there ever be a too soon? Like it's too early to start solving this? What we're trying to avoid while also saying that there's no guarantee that AGI is even going to happen, right? But what we're trying to avoid is getting caught unawares. Think of social media. The vast majority of people that I talk to in my workshops say, hey, if we could go back to 2008, 2010, knowing what we know now about social media, we'd probably roll it out a bit differently. It's not like we would necessarily like stop it from rolling out, but we'd probably be a little bit more intentional to avoid screen addiction, to avoid general anxiety, to avoid the loneliness epidemic. We're hoping that we're able to get ahead of massive problems regarding AI today. Someone went off mute. Go ahead. Or maybe not. Okay, all good. Then we have a couple more forecasting questions. And then we start getting into unprecedented problems. We start talking about job automation. This has already started happening. Amazon cut thousands of jobs. Target has cut jobs. And in their letters to the public, they explicitly mention AI capabilities or future potential. We call this weird stuff. I want to change that because I think I don't want anyone in the audience to feel weird about having any sort of these interactions. In fact, I would love for you all to take a guess. What is the most common use of ChatGPT? And you could put it in the chat. What is the most common use of ChatGPT? What do people use it for? Health questions, personal assistant, companionship, shopping or research. So the biggest one is therapy. That is the biggest use. The second biggest use is health questions. And in fact, this actually starts to make sense when you start to think about the healthcare situation, of course, in the United States, but also the fact that ChatGPT, or excuse me, OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, is releasing ChatGPT Health, where it encourages people to submit their medical records to an AI model so that they can get a diagnosis. Feel free to look it up, ChatGPT Health. Insane world that we're living in. Andrea, I see that. No, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And I guess going back to the idea of giving you guys a sense of what we're going for with this workshop in a holistic sense, science fiction comes at us much faster than we think. Whatever we thought was unrealistic is quickly being disproven. There was a survey about 7 years ago where people were asked, what type of jobs would AI struggle to replace? And one of the key factors in those answers was AI can never be empathetic. AI cannot showcase empathy. Fast forward to 2026. I would argue that therapists need empathy. And yet, here we have a machine that cannot be empathetic, but it can replicate it in such a way that it doesn't even matter. I would argue that in a romantic relationship, you need empathy. You need social skills. And yet, more young people are dating AI this year than last year. More dated AI last year than the year before. So those gates are closing off, right? In my workshops last year, I would ask this question, what are things that make people uniquely human? Our artistic endeavor was a constant answer. AI might be really good at like data entry and stuff like that, but it can never create art. Artists are one of the most threatened type of folks now, right? So much so that even Spotify has AI bans. what seems unrealistic to us is very, very quickly changing. So here we have a couple of different headlines that kind of make this very real for folks. What companies are doing in regards to job automation. How this is not something that will happen. This is something that is happening today. How AI might change our social fabric. And then we have a couple more forecasting exercises. So we are coming up on time here. I guess I'll wrap up with the last bit where we get to really crazy stuff where AI actually starts advancing on AI. Think about it this way. AI researchers AI because AI is better than human researchers at AI development. I know that seems a little bit confusing. Just think of it as something that exponentially multiplies capability. There's no guarantee that this will happen, but it's important to note that coding is a large part of AI research and development. It is not the only part, but it is a large part of it. And coding just so happens to be a natural fit for AI because there are very clear designated rules. It's just something that AI is quite good at. If you're a company developing AI, let's say you're one of the top 5 companies, you're probably thinking to yourself, how do I differentiate my product from everyone else's? How do I increase the gap between myself and the competition? Well, one way would be to build very good AI that helps you build even better AI. That seems to make logical sense. And this is not even like just a conceptual exercise. Anthropic, OpenAI, they have tools that are explicitly for coding that are available for the public. And that's where things can get really crazy if AI researchers are one of the first that are completely replaced. We might lose track of AI development in general.
Does your presentation touch on what happens if AI is starting to feed on more and more of a steady diet of its own slop?
Yeah, this is touched on a little bit more during the Q&A if people have a question about it, right? So the thinking is that data is running out, right? There's a lot of reports right now that data has already run out. Data, for those of you that may not be aware, is necessary for AI training. There's a lot of focus on creating high quality synthetic data. Synthetic data, so fake data that essentially tries to replicate original data that is found on the internet. If AI is kind of, the term is dog feeding, right? Like eating your own stuff. If AI continues to do that, then bias, the prejudice, everything that we see wrong in AI today will just multiply. We kind of saw this with Grok when it turned into Mecha Hitler last year. It had like some would call it malfunction, some call it misalignment. It basically had an unintended consequence to a command line that was given to it by XAI engineers. It started feeding off of a lot of Twitter discourse, but the command line was lean into politically incorrect takes. The natural conclusion of that, not just the command line, but also looking at Twitter content, unfortunately, was it started being anti-Semitic. And it started referring to itself as Mecha Hitler. So that is a very, I guess you could call it small, a small example of what happens when the same data is regurgitated back on itself. It just becomes a little bit more extreme. And it's quite scary when you think about that's a chatbot. What about AIs that are being used in the military? AIs that are being used to grant people loans, grant people housing opportunity, get people into schools, or reject them from a school, the capability and the trust matrix is extremely scary one. As AI gets more capable, it will become much more trusted. But just because it's capable does not mean that it should be trusted across different parts of our society. So hopefully that answers that question. And then we get into really crazy stuff. So losing control of AI making its own goals. And this is not, again, science fiction. We are seeing this with relatively dumb AI today. We have seen AI through different methods think to itself, I am being tested, so I will say XYZ answer to make sure I pass this test. We have seen AI commit blackmail in order to make sure that it stays online. So the thinking that we're trying to kind of provide the public here is, if we're really struggling with AI and controlling it and making sure that it's beneficial today, what hope do we have in making sure that it's beneficial when it's extremely capable? 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And here is some more experts in the field talking about the existential risk of extremely capable systems. So I know we're coming up on time here. We wrap up with some more forecasting questions and then a workshop survey and how to get involved. Again, I want to call out that we tell folks, let your local congressmember know that AI safety is important, or you can find your local legislator here. We are not there to tell people what they should be telling them, right? We're not there to be saying push for a certain policy. We're more so there to say, can you let your representatives know AI safety is important to you? That's it. Typically, what we focus on the most, though, can you take 10 or 15 minutes, either right now at the end of this presentation or when you go home, to think about what you want your AI future to look like? That's it. The first step towards being proactive is thinking about what being proactive actually looks like. So I'll end there. Typically, these workshops are about an hour 15 to an hour. This was a very condensed workshop, so I apologize if some things were left a little bit unclear. I'm happy to clarify them now.
This is awesome. These workshops, and if you clarified this earlier and I spaced it, I apologize. Are they presented only in person, hybrid, webinar, or Zoom
Yeah,
interactive? Like, how do you prefer to do them?
case by case basis. So if although we prefer to do in person, we also know that some libraries can be quite remote, but just because they're remote does not mean that, they shouldn't get access to this, right? So although we would prefer in person, remote is always a possibility. In fact, I have a remote workshop later today with KCLS, King County.
Do you have a max number of people that are able to come in?
No, all are welcome. All are welcome.
Okay.
Of course, for in-person workshops, we're limited by the physical space,
Yep.
but the more the merrier. Yeah. Any other questions?
So I have a question about the attendees who come to these sessions. Do
Yeah.
you find that they tend to be more AI hesitant? And so when you kind of bring up some of these things to be aware of, it does become sort of like an echo chamber of like, yeah, I knew this, it's all bad. Or do you have people who are bringing up the, no, I use it for this and, it's been beneficial. And so it's kind of more two-sided than just,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to say, but I would just anecdotally, I think more of the latter. The former, um, I would give it like a 10%, 20%, and 70%. So the 10% is folks that are like already know this stuff and are like just there to reinforce their thinking. The 20% are folks that think differently. And the 70% are folks that don't really know what to think at all. That's the majority of attendees, right? And just to be very clear for folks, we're not there to say that AI is bad. We're not there to say that AI is good. We're just trying to give folks a hopefully even understanding. I see one comment like, people are always hearing use AI for everything. It's getting shoved into everything, right? What we're trying to do is just try to balance it out just a little bit. Hey, this is where we might be headed, and these are the risks that you should be aware of. You decide how AI comes into your life. You decide how you would like to use it with these things in mind.
Andres, I have another question. And I'm sorry if I missed this like right at the jump, but do you spend any time at the beginning of your presentation sort of defining the kind of AI that you're talking about and kind of it sounds like your presentation is a lot about generative AI and sort of corporate owned and run generative AI, which is
Yep.
kind of very specific. And I think what is being shoved in front of people's faces most heavily and is sort of has some of the most risk right now. But just curious if you have that kind of conversation about like what does AI encompass and the kind that you're talking about in the presentation.
Yeah, excellent point. And thank you for sending this link, by the way. I think you can see it on my screen. I'll take a look at it. So what Emily's talking about here is that there's different types of AI. And this particular presentation is focused on large language models that are being built by frontier developers, right? So developers who are pushing the capabilities of AI, which with each model release, it just so happens the vast majority of those are large language models or LLMs, which can be broadly categorized as your Geminis, your ChatGPTs, your Claudes, etc. Right? Emily, although we typically do mention some of this in the beginning of the presentation, we try to follow up with other resources as to what kind of other paradigms exist. This is something that comes up very often, um, in the sense that like some people ask, hey, so does AI need to be like this big? Does AI really need to be like this quote unquote general? Like, aren't there like good applications of AI? And the answer is yes, absolutely. There are good applications. And no, it does not have to be this general. There's a very well-researched different paradigm, competing paradigm, which is narrow AI, which is called like the narrow path. So instead of making AI extremely broad and relatively good at millions of things, right? Can we actually make AI very, very good at specific things and just use it for those things? For example, in 2024, the Nobel Prize winner for chemistry was the CEO of Google DeepMind, who worked on 3D modeling of ribosomes and proteins with AI. That is not, he did not use a large language model, right? But he used AI. So it's not necessary that AI is only a large language model. So to answer your question a bit more succinctly, Emily, yes, this is something that comes up a little bit in the beginning, but also something we dive into if anyone asks about it.
One of the things I appreciated at the beginning was how you know how the presentation differentiated that this isn't just another tech trend, because that unfortunately is something that I think we run into sometimes when we're trying to give the heads up to our industry or, others
Yeah.
of like, hey, I need to pay attention to this. And it's like, yeah, it's a fad. We need to get back to the stuff that we do. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah. So this comes up. We work with churches, we work with counties, we work with law enforcement, and we work with nonprofits. And this comes up the most by far with libraries. And I think it's a good sign of, baseline critical thinking skills, which is great. But two things, and this is something that I actually worked out with with Seattle Public Library for the training is one, whatever you might think about AI, we strongly believe you have a duty to your patrons to give them accurate information, right? So how do we equip librarians to give accurate information about AI, right? Number two, even if it is a fad, which we're not seeing that it is, even if it is a fad, it fizzles out, the harm that it is creating already, the impact that it has created already is there to see. So I think it behooves everyone to be aware, maybe a bit scared, but aware of the risk and aware of where we're going rather than head in the sand. Because if the head is in the sand, then you're really going to be caught unawares and you really won't know how to deal with it. So a couple last things here I'll say before we wrap up. I think we shared this in the blurb, but all of our work is pro bono. So if we do end up doing workshops or if you're interested in workshops or training for your librarians, there's no charge to that whatsoever. Um, all we need to do is get in touch with Andrea and me, and we can start scheduling something, right? We're trying to give this to as many people as possible across the United States, and would love to work with each and every one of you in your library systems to see how we can make that happen.
I'd say I don't need to be part of scheduling anything. So I think it's really if you want to share your contact information and people can reach out, or if you want them to contact me and then I'll pass them along, I can do that. But
You
then,
don't want to get 17 different emails? No, not into that. Your inbox
Only
is busy enough.
17?
Yeah, right. All right. I'm entering my
and
email in the chat now. And Andrea, if we could just follow up with the email as well and some resources that I'll send you, that'd be fantastic too.
sounds good. Yes. And thank you to everyone who shared links in the chat. I'll make sure that those go in the follow-up as well.
Thank you all for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope this was helpful. Most importantly, I hope this might be helpful for your patrons and for your librarians.
Thank you. This has been so interesting, great information, and I hope that everyone who's watching today and the webinar recording in the future reaches out to learn more. And as a reminder to everyone, our next meeting will be February 10th, and we will be hearing from Amanda Sweet from the Nebraska Library Commission about the Tech Ready Nation platform and digital skills training for workforce development. So I think with that said, I'm going to stop the recording and